Men speak like this, they get canceled. Yeah. They get considered misogynist, assholes, toxic, insecure, small dick energy, whatever. So you guys think we're way more complex than we really are. Men are simple. Sex, silent sandwiches, man. Real talk. Society lies to you and tells you, be strong, be independent, make your money, blah, blah, blah. What society doesn't tell you is the more money you make, the more doors close, because the men that make that kind of money don't want those types of women. You have to like the reality, but your career as a woman doesn't hold the same potency for mating purposes that it does.
For mating purpose.
Yeah, they always talk about mating like it's on a nature show.
My career is for money purposes.
I think maybe it was traditionally attractive to old world men to have a kind of uneducated, pointless woman just there. Not pointless. No. Like one that was just like in some neighbor's house, and they were like, "We have this daughter laying around," and she was like, "Hello, I am unwed," and they're like, "You're 18, great." And
if these gals show up to their date with a mop and a bucket, like, I am ready to keep your home, like, that's not gonna lead to a second date.
I make excellent chicken soup. Like,
I make excellent chicken soup.
I'm sorry about that.
First things first, let's address the elephant in the room. I have a massive sty on one of my eyes. I've started riding the subway again, and I can't descend into those noxious underground fumes without getting an infection on my eyelid. Speaking of noxious underground fumes, I indulged my morbid curiosity recently and listened to a few minutes of a Manosphere podcast called Fresh and Fit. The Manosphere, for those of you that aren't aware, is an ecosystem that, from what I can tell, is made up of pickup artists, men's rights activists, dating coaches, weightlifters, and run-of-the-mill NFT grifters. They seem to think that feminism and modern dating culture have conspired to leave a large portion of the male population sexless and alone. I was hesitant to take this topic on because I don't know if Fresh and Fit should really be taken seriously. I only picked Fresh and Fit because they're the people I see talked about the most. It could be that they're not the most representative of what the Manosphere believes, and maybe they're just the ones that get the most attention because they have the most provocative thumbnails and titles. Admittedly, this is a very shallow foray into the Manosphere. Fit claims that, I feel weird calling him Fit. I should look up his real name. Hold on. Okay, Myron. Their names are Myron and Walter, which are great names. We should call the podcast Myron and Walter. Yeah. Fit does seem to want to back up his claims about the reality of dating for men with statistics and research. From their channel, you can find a link tree that has a bunch of articles about sex and dating. Part 1. The growing number of male virgins. He says in one episode that the majority of virgins today are men.
We have the highest levels ever recorded of men reporting being virgins.
Mm-hmm. And from what I could see, that is true. The latest data that I could find is from the CDC, a survey that was taken from 2003 to 2008. So not super recent, but in this survey, the CDC reports that virgins make up 12.3% of the female population and 14.3% of males ages 20 to 24. And then that number drops below 5% for both male and female virgins ages 25 to 29, and as low as 0.3% for virgins ages 40 to 44. So while we're seeing growing numbers of younger virgins, the data that we have also suggests that people are eventually having sex, it's just later in life. Part 2. Why are men having less sex?
It's simple. What percentage of men do you think are actually sexually active with women? Out of 100%?
Men.
Half? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Half as well.
Half? And you said 80?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's only about 10 to 20% are having sex with like 90% of the girls.
No, I think it's 80 because when I go out, I see a lot of guys in relationships. I know that a lot of guys, take different girls out on dates at different times, and
That's the apex fallacy. You're only seeing the top percentage of men that can actually execute that. So, with all due respect, your personal observations of what you see does not necessarily dictate the reality of the world. Okay, So just because you might see something because you're in a certain position
Okay.
to observe it.
He links to an article from the Journal of the American Medical Association that shows that there has been a decline in sexual activity among men who are ages 18 to 24. It states, between 2000 and 2002 and 2016 and 2018, past year sexual inactivity rose from almost 19%, 2000 and 2002, to almost 31% among men ages 18 to 24. We're not talking about virgins, we're talking about sexual inactivity. So it's not necessarily that they've never had sex, just that they haven't had sex in the past year.
Well, that was everybody in 2021.
Right, but this is looking at from 2016 to 2018. Will you pay attention? From what little I've seen of their podcast, Walter and Myron ascribe this trend to women being better educated and men having less of a chance because of how dating apps work. I got so into analyzing this decline in sexual activity among men and the reasons behind it that I completely forgot to come back to this point that if 30% of men are describing themselves as sexually inactive, that would suggest that 70% of men are having sex, which is a lot closer to his guest's guess than his estimation of 10 to 20% of men. Just wanted to underline how very, very wrong he is, according to data that he links to and has presumably read. In the Washington Post, I saw a similar survey. Chris Ingraham reported similar data from the General Social Survey. And in that article, they analyze why it is. Jean Twenge, a professor of psychology at San Diego State University, points to the fact that labor force participation among young men has fallen, particularly in the wake of the last recession. She says researchers see a connection between labor force participation and stable relationships. The article also points to a connection between living at home for longer and having an inactive sex life. In 2014, 35% of men age 18 to 34 were living in their parents' home, compared with 29% of women. When you're living at home, it's probably harder to bring sexual partners into your bedroom, Twenge points out. This tracks with the study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which found that men who were sexually inactive were more likely to be unemployed, part-time employed, or students. What?
Just like, you ain't got no job.
They're finding very fancy ways of saying we don't want no scrubs.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Another article in the Fresh and Fit Linktree from Healthline that states unmarried, low income, and unemployed or part-time employed men are more likely to have had no sex within the past year than those who are married, had higher income, or had jobs. Having jobs and being married are two factors that strongly correlate with having had sex recently. And those are things that today's youth are increasingly putting off. Is this inherently a bad thing? Maybe. I mean, it'll probably affect fertility rates in the long term, and we'll see how that bears out. But does it mean that feminism is bad? Which is where Myron and Walter are kind of falling. Fellas, just get a job. We're not asking a lot. Going to grad school is another factor that has a strong relationship with not having an active sex life.
Wait, so grad students don't get down?
No, because they're more likely to live at home. I believe it's because they're more likely to live at home and they're just busy.
Yeah, and poor because they're in grad school.
And they don't have money, and they're not employed.
And they don't have jobs. Oh yeah, they're the worst ones.
They're delaying their entrance into the workforce.
Wow, I never thought about like grad school students as being like the
I have.
least fuckable.
Have you ever met a grad
Yeah,
school
I'm just now
student?
piecing together how miserable they are.
That does not surprise me in the least. I've seen articles in other men's magazines addressing this data about men not having as much sex, and interestingly, none of them mention this connection with labor force numbers. It just seems to not really interest them. Fascinatingly, or actually totally unsurprisingly, in this Bro Bible article, they present the data, and then at the end, they pose the question, is it the Me Too movement? Could that be what's driving the lack of sex in men 18 to 24? Fuck you. I don't want to get worked up because I think that that's a lot of the point in this bro-y manosphere bullshit is they really want to get a rise out of the female audience because they know that's what's going to get them a lot of attention. And if they can't make you come, they might as well make you scream, you know? Like, I think that that's a big motivation there. Part 3. Are single women miserable? Fresh and Fit also links to an article in Psychology Today called Meet the Least Happy People in America. This article addresses a survey that found that unmarried women were the most unhappy people. I assume the conclusion that Myron and Walter would come to is that unmarried women are unhappy because they would be happier if they were married to a man in a traditional submissive role. But what they don't get into is the fact that married women aren't the happiest. Widowed women are the happiest. It's almost like we kind of don't have great options because when we're married, we're just looking at the clock, waiting for them to. It's not us. This doesn't apply to us. And then when we're single, we have a huge selection of unmarriageable men who live with their parents and don't have a lot of ambition in the workforce. Meanwhile, here we are with our college degrees and some idea of what we want to do with our lives. Part 4. Porn. Porn. You know? It's like, I think a lot of these unmarried 18 to 24 unemployed dudes, like, what are they doing instead of going on dates? I think we all can guess. My admittedly limited research into this topic didn't uncover a clear link between pornography usage and sexual inactivity among men, but I did find this study that addresses the fact that sexual dysfunction has increased among younger men, and it suggests the use of pornography as a possible cause. It really bothers me how much Myron reaches for this idea that women live in a fantasy world. But the whole thing with porn is I feel like that's an unrealistic fantasy that a lot of men prefer over the reality of interacting with another human. What is going on?
So when you go to a car lot and you're going to buy a car, right?
Comparing women to cars now.
Well, I have to give you an
It's
analogy so
analogy.
you understand. So if the mileage is 100,000, are you going to care?
The woman, just give me an example with like
Let
a
her
car.
finish.
Please let me finish.
Y'all
Okay,
finish.
yeah.
If you asinine your argument is, here's the problem. Let me please finish. I even said in the beginning, don't cut me off.
Us
Please
in
finish.
a relationship
finish.
so
Please
we can
finish.
post what we
Let
want.
me
You have an
finish.
insecurity with
finish.
that. That's on
Let me finish.
you.
Let me finish.
I'm
finish my
letting
point
you
yet.
finish, but every time I let
You're
you
literally
finish,
cutting me off right.
Myron is a vibrantly insecure man, like a lot of people in the self-help space. It's interesting in the self-help world that these are the people who end up being in this position of the blind leading the blind. Here's a man who suffers from a huge lack of self-awareness. Like, if I had to guess, his struggles in dating have nothing to do with money or looks. It's gotta be a very abrasive personality. Just the way he screams into the microphone, like he's at war with all things around him at all times.
Sorry for that microphone. It takes a lot of abuse.
Like, human chemistry is more complicated than I think he wants it to be. That is just too bad. With that, I think we should look at some of the footage together. There is this episode where this woman, this 304, which we've learned looks like hoe if you look at it upside down. There's this clip called "These 304s would not listen." Cops call.
If we want to keep going, you shut the fuck up and you listen. Don't tell us how to run our show. If you don't like it, get the fuck off.
Respectfully.
Like this is you're here as a guest, whoever said that.
Respectfully.
So we're going to continue the show the way we want to continue the show. You're on our platform as a guest.
Yep.
Do you have an issue with it? Does anyone have an issue with that?
No, Myron. I wasn't going off on you. I was going off on those two going back and forth over
It doesn't matter. If we want to keep going with the monotony, we're going to keep going with the monotony.
Sounds good.
It's our platform.
That's right.
Period.
Y'all.
Don't fucking tell us how to run our show, man.
Come on now.
Make your own show.
You're a fucking guest here. Period. Don't fucking tell us how to run our show, man.
He's so unpleasant.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Anyone have an issue with that?
No.
Rude.
What?
I said
It's
no.
rude.
We don't
What's
have
rude?
an issue.
What's rude?
Like the way you're talking to us.
It doesn't matter. It's our platform.
Calm down.
You're here
Okay.
as a guest. All right. So do not tell us how to run our show. Do I go to your house and just tell you, hey, you know what? You should do this and that. Do I do that?
No.
Okay.
Exactly. So no one's being rude. We're just run. All right. Get the fuck out then. No one's being rude.
Just takes off the headphones.
Not going to disrespect the platform. I said that from the beginning. I told y'all. I warned y'all. Don't do that shit.
Myron,
Most show hosts don't act like this when dealing with their guests or talent or really anyone, because it all comes back to you, and you can't get away with treating anyone like this on a real set. Like he's having a birthday party where his mom invited all the neighbors, and he's yelling at them like, "You can't play with that. No, that's mine. Oh, no, you can't touch that. Like this is my party. You have to sit there and you have to do what I say."
This has been interesting to do on our first wedding anniversary. So it's made me even more happy to be married.
Yes.
And to have found one of the few remaining good men on this planet.
They are out there. Give them a chance, even if they're sweaty. Hello, I am unwed.